This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing in this episode is medical advice, and I am not telling you to use, take, or purchase anything. Always do your own research and consult a qualified professional if needed. Let's talk about something that a lot of people are thinking, but not a lot of people are saying out loud. Are peptides being ruined by social media? Because if you've been around this space for even a little while, you've probably noticed something. What used to feel like a niche, research-driven, almost underground conversation has now turned into something very different. It's louder, it's faster, it's simplified, and in a lot of cases, it's completely distorted. Scroll any platform right now, and you'll see it. People throwing around peptide names like they're supplements. Before and after photos with zero context. Claims that sound almost too good to be true. And stacks being pushed like there's some kind of magic shortcut. So the question is this growth a good thing? Or is it actually hurting the space? Let's break this down in a real way. First, we have to understand what peptides actually are. At their core, peptides are signaling molecules. They're short chains of amino acids that tell your body to do something. That's it. They're not magic. They're not shortcuts. They're signals. And that's where the problem starts on social media. Because signaling is nuanced. It depends on timing, dosage, context, and the state of your body. But nuance doesn't go viral. Simplicity does. So instead of explaining how something actually works, what you get is a headline. This burns fat. This builds muscle. This heals everything. And people latch onto that because it's easy to understand, and it promises a result. But the truth is, peptides don't create results out of nowhere. They amplify or influence processes that are already happening in your body. If your lifestyle, your nutrition, your sleep, and your overall health are not in place, the outcome is not going to match the hype. And that disconnect is one of the biggest ways social media is distorting reality. Another issue is speed. Social media moves fast. Trends come and go almost overnight. One week everyone is talking about one peptide, the next week it's something else. There's no time for long-term observation, no time for proper understanding, and definitely no time for accountability. People jump from one thing to the next chasing results, and they never actually learn what's working and what's not. It turns into experimentation without structure. And when that happens, you start to see stacking without purpose. People combining multiple compounds because they saw someone else do it, not because they understand the mechanisms behind it. That's where things can go sideways. Because when you're dealing with signaling pathways, more is not always better. In fact, sometimes more can create conflicting signals. Your body is not a machine where you just keep adding inputs and expect a better output. It's a system. And systems require balance. Social media doesn't teach balance. It rewards extremes. Another thing that's happening is the loss of credibility. And this one matters a lot. Because as more people enter the space, you get a mix of voices. Some are knowledgeable, some are learning, and some are just repeating what they heard without verifying it. And when misinformation spreads, it spreads fast. You'll see things like incorrect dosing ranges, unrealistic timelines, or claims that don't align with how the biology actually works. And because it's packaged in a confident way, people believe it. Confidence does not equal accuracy. And that's something that gets lost online. There's also the issue of expectation. Social media is built on visual results. Before and after transformations. Quick changes. Dramatic improvements. But peptides don't always work like that. A lot of their effects are subtle. They build over time. They support processes rather than override them. So when someone goes and expecting a dramatic, overnight transformation, they're often disappointed. Or worse, they assume something didn't work and start changing variables too quickly. That leads to confusion, and confusion leads to more misinformation. Another layer to this is the commercialization of peptides in the social media space. And this is where things get a little more complicated. Because once something becomes popular, it becomes profitable. And when there's money involved, the messaging can shift. Instead of education, you get marketing. Instead of nuance, you get simplified selling points. Instead of transparency, you get selective information. And that doesn't mean everything is bad. There are still people doing it right. There are still sources of good information, but it means you have to be more careful about what you're listening to. You have to ask yourself, is this person teaching me something, or are they trying to sell me something?
Because those are not always the same thing.
Another thing social media has done is blur the line between research and application. Peptides exist in a space that is very specific, and that specificity matters. But online, that line gets blurred. People talk about them casually, like they're part of a normal routine. And that creates a perception that they're simple or low risk. And again, that comes back to context. Everything depends on context. Without that, you're not getting the full picture. There's also a psychological component to all of this. Social media creates comparison. You see someone else's results, and you start to measure yourself against that. But you don't know their starting point. You don't know their lifestyle. You don't know what else they're doing behind the scenes. So you're comparing your reality to someone else's highlight. And that can lead to unrealistic expectations and unnecessary changes. Now, let's flip this for a second, because it's not all negative. Social media has also made information more accessible. Years ago, this kind of conversation was much harder to find. Now, you can learn a lot if you know where to look. Communities have formed. People are sharing experiences. There's more awareness than ever before. And that part is valuable. The problem is not access to information. The problem is filtering it, knowing what to keep and what to ignore. And that's a skill. So, how do you navigate this without getting pulled into the noise? The first thing is slow down. You don't need to chase every new thing that shows up. Just because something is trending doesn't mean it's relevant to you. The second thing is understand mechanisms, not just outcomes. Instead of asking, what does this do? Ask, how does this work? What pathway is it influencing? What system is it interacting with? When you understand that, you're not dependent on someone else's interpretation. The third thing is track your own data. Pay attention to what's actually happening, not what you expect to happen. That's how you learn. And the fourth thing is be honest about your foundation. Because peptides are not a replacement for the basics. They're an addition. If the foundation is not there, the results won't be either. At the end of the day, peptides are not being ruined by social media, but they're being misrepresented in a way that can lead people in the wrong direction. And it's up to you to decide how you interact with that. You can follow the noise, or you can step back and learn how things actually work. Because the people who take the time to understand this space are the ones who get the most out of it. Not because they're using more, but because they're using it better. And that's the difference. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not providing medical advice or instructions for use. If you have questions about anything discussed, use it as a starting point for your own research and consult a qualified professional. Thanks for listening, keep learning, and stay curious.